Hey Ghoul friends, it's me, Adrian, or Ayden. Either way, I am still your host, and you are still listening to Susto, the podcast of ooky spooky scary stories. How are you? Welcome back, Ghoul friend. Thank you for being here, and if this is your first time, I hope the haunting is happy. I hope that you've been enjoying the show if you've been listening back. Thanks for catching up, and if you haven't, maybe go back and listen to a few older ones if you just got here. After this one, of course. Ghoul friends, it is officially spooky. Well, I mean, I feel like all year round is spooky season for me, of course, and I'm sure for many of you, but finally the world around us is catching up. We're seeing the decorations trickling into the stores and all the spooky events and content is being put up everywhere. So I'm very excited to celebrate that. And speaking of celebrations, this weekend actually, Saturday, September 16th, I'm going to the San Antonio Paranormal Fest with the Curious Twins. You can get your tickets for this at CuriousTwins.com. I believe it's $40 for adults and only $10 for the kiddos. It sounds like it's going to be a great time. There's going to be, of course, vendors, so I will be there with my table spreading the word of Susto and selling some handmade goodies. There's also going to be a lineup of speakers. My ghoul friends, the Paranormal Putas, are going to be speaking. There's also going to be live music. There's going to be food, drink, activities. There's going to be so much cool stuff happening there, so I hope you're going to go, and if you do, make sure to stop by my table, say hi, share a scary story with me, just kind of come hang out. It's going to be a really good time. I'm so excited to be in San Antonio. I do have other events in the works that haven't been finalized yet, but you of course can keep up with any and all updates on the show, including now live events or anywhere I'm going to be attending as Susto, of course by following the social media pages. That's at Susto Podcast on every platform. Also, while you're there, you can send in your own scary story if you have one to be read on a Letters from the Beyond episode. It doesn't have to be a written scary story. You can also send in photo, video, audio recording, anything you have that you think is spooky and unexplainable and you would like me to share as part of Susto, please send it in. I would love that. You can also send it in via email to sustopodcast@gmail.com. You can leave it in a 5-star review wherever you are listening if you're able to do that on your podcast platform, or you can do so by, get this goals, by visiting sustopodcast.com. There is a contact form there that you can fill out and send in your stuff that way. This website has been fun. It's just a place, it's a central place where everything Susto is going to live, everything online, of course. So if you haven't yet, please make sure to go check out the website. It's sustopodcast.com. I'm introducing like a blog feature. I don't know how consistent it's going to be, but anytime I have like a spooky thought that I feel like maybe isn't a whole episode, but I do want to kind of talk about, I'll just write it out on the blog. So you can go check out all the episodes, blogs, the videos are up there, a contact form, whatever it is. Just go play around on sustopodcast.com. And of course, tippy tap all of those buttons wherever you are listening to the show. It helps. It's the easiest way to support the show. All right, we're just going to go ahead and get into it. This episode is pretty loosely structured, and I'll talk about that more in the next segment, but just a heads up, there's no really narrative portion of this episode like there usually is, but we've done something like this before, so don't worry, don't get too scared. We're still going to have a good time while we talk about the phrase sana sana colita de rana.
Hey, what's up? I'm Charlie.
And I'm Tyler.
And we are Believing the Bizarre,
a paranormal podcast that dives into the unknown and the unusual every Tuesday.
We discuss hauntings, cryptids, aliens, UFO encounters, conspiracies, and more.
And we break down whether or not we find them believable.
All right, listen, if you're not paying for electricity, you're not paying for dinner.
Saw a terrifying looking face pressed to the window with gaping eyes.
Almost reached it when the laughter stopped suddenly, and a sound behind me made me turn around.
Sorry, I was gonna do it, but then I had SpaceX.
So we got you covered, whether you like horror or laughs, or both. We actually really hope it's both.
With over 3 million downloads, you'll be joining a bizarro community that we promise is more than just Mothman and our parents.
We even take creepy stories from our listeners and turn them into episodes.
Check out Believing the Bizarre on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Believing the Bizarre, a podcast as bizarre as you are.
Okay, before we get into anything else, I want to talk a little bit about what the this phrase is. And so the first thing that I have here is a link from folklore.usc.edu. And I've used this archive before. They're the USC Digital Folklore Archives. And of course, you can find direct links to everything in the Susto Google Docs on patreon.com/Susto podcast. But usually what these people do, what these folks do over at the USC Digital Folklore Archives is they take, what would be the right word? I guess anecdotes from different people or just entries from different people. I really like the way that they do these because they're short entries and they're pretty detailed. So again, this first link, it says it's just called Sana Sana Colita de Rana. It's a proverb from Mexico, primarily in Spanish. And I will say right now, it's not only from Mexico. There are many places in the world that it's from, but this entry that they're talking about, I guess specifically with this person, that their background is Mexico. So this also says occupation, they're a construction worker, they reside in Los Angeles, and they took down this entry in March of 2016. This entry starts, it says, it's a short one, so I'm just going to read it to you. It says, Sana sana colita de rana, si no sana hoy, sanera mañana, which translation is, they're there, butt or ass of a frog, or tail, some people say. If it does not feel better today, it will tomorrow. And usually, at least the way that I grew up with this, is they would say it, sana sana colita de rana, and then they would also rub whatever or wherever the injury was. So if it was like a scrape or a bump or something, that's what they would do. They would rub over it. This continues. This proverb was told by Francisco Garcia. He has heard it from hundreds of people in his city, Zacatecas, Mexico. He typically heard it when he was a child and injured himself. A lot of times, they could not afford medicine or any treatment, so his parents would just chant the proverb and he would believe he would feel better and stop crying. So I think immediately this makes me kind of think like, oh, well, it's just a placebo effect, right? Because there's obviously no quote unquote medicinal action being taken. There's no medicine being administered. There's no medical procedure happening. It's just this chant or song sometimes it's being said. But medicine looks different to different cultures, right? If there's anything that we've learned throughout the course of Susto, is that things are not always as they seem, especially when it comes to religion and medicine. This continues. He knows that a lot of people from different cultures use the same proverb in order to let their child know that the pain and injury is not permanent because it will heal and feel better the next day. So it's kind of like a psychological thing. Pain is temporary. Don't worry, it's going to pass, basically. Just a way to calm someone down. It continues, he first heard it when he was about 4 or 5 years old and has told it to other children as well as his own. If he ever comes in contact with a child that has hurt himself, many times all it takes is saying the proverb and the child will cease to cry or feel hurt. I can definitely say that I heard this growing up at a young age. I mean, kids are dangerous, right? Kids get hurt all the time, and I was no exception. I was always climbing a tree, falling out of it, tripping when running, just always getting hurt for whatever reason. Yeah, I remember this chant being said to me to kind of just like calm me down. And honestly, sometimes it was like, okay, sana sana, get the fuck over it. Like, you're gonna be fine. Like, your tripas aren't falling out, is what they would say. Not verbatim. My mom would not say those words to me, but that was kind of the sentiment. Kids, surprise, surprise, can be dramatic sometimes. And so it's like, okay, sana sana, you're gonna be fine. Move on. This continues. When Francisco said the proverb, he'd say it with a smile on his face to let the listener know everything will be okay. You usually have to rub the spot that is in pain or their head and maybe say it multiple times. Like I said, the rubbing of the injured area. If it really hurts, until they stop sobbing or focusing on the pain. So again, like a distraction. It's the whole like, pajarito, pajarito, like pay attention over here. If you're watching, by the way, this is on video for Best Girlfriends on Patreon. Some of you might know it, but yeah, the pajarito thing is like, a parent, another way to distract kid from pain or something, or like when they're coughing, is to wiggle their fingers like this and say like, oh, look, it's a bird, pay attention over here. So that's what this reminds me of too. Okay, the last paragraph of this says, Francisco is from Mexico and has heard it many times where he is from. I think this is supposed to be a quote, and it says, I have heard it hundreds of times, as well as when I was a child when I would injure myself. My mother, auntie, or any other close relative would chant the proverb to me, and I felt that I was going to be okay despite the pain. My mother and auntie are from Honduras, and they have heard it when they were children as well. The proverb has almost been to every Latin American country and has spread to the United States. That is amazing, since it is just one sentence that has been able to travel so far and serve as a placebo for many children. The chant has not changed much either, since it is very simple and difficult to alter. So I will say that, like, I totally agree with that. I have heard this saying countless times, and when I hear it from other people who are from different parts of Texas, who are from outside of Texas, and then from putting this episode together, it's the same across the board. It's always sana sana colita de rana. And it's hard to mess that up, right? Normally when you quote, play that game of telephone where you start with a sentence or an idea and then it goes through different people. But in a group of 10 people, it completely changes. But this one somehow has managed to stay the same all this time. So I do want to bring up, I know I'm saying that it stays the same all the time, but there's a point of debate when it comes to this phrase. And Remezcla posted a poll again in 2016 on their Twitter. When Remezcla posted this, again, this is about 7 years ago, they wrote sana sana culito de rana, si no sana hoy, sanará mañana. But then apparently there was this whole debate in their comment section about whether it's culito or colita. And so they have all of these entries, and I just wanted to kind of reiterate that point of how this is spread across the diaspora, if you will, but all over the world. They have a number of entries here from different people that responded saying which one they thought it was and why. And I'll give you the results of the poll afterward, but I just want to go through some of these. This person is from Peru, and they voted for Colita de Rana. And they said because it's something adults tell kids when they get hurt, so it doesn't make sense they would use the word ass or culito in front of children. Instead, they say colita or butt de rana. This other person from the Dominican Republic, they voted for culito. And the amount of times I'm gonna say culito and colita on this episode, but they voted for culito, and they said because porque las ranas no tienen colitas, adult ones anyway. Yeah, so a colita, I think it's also a tail, right? And so we know that like tadpoles have tails, but adult frogs or toads, from what I know, they don't have tails. So they're like, no, it's from a rana, it's from a frog, and so it doesn't have a tail. It has a butt, right? Okay, again, with the idea of the tail, this person, it says that they're born in DC, raised in Maryland, and repping Peru. They said Team Colita all the way. They said, why? Because Team Culito loves to say that they're right because frogs don't have tails. But frogs don't exactly have culos either. Incidentally, don't Google image frog butt and culo de rana while eating lunch. Thank you for the heads up. Also, frogs do have tails when they're tadpoles, so there is a clear victory here, is what this person says. Yeah, maybe an adult frog doesn't have a tail, but they did at one point. So maybe it's just the tadpoles, the baby frogs, that have all the healing properties. And we're going to talk about that right now too. But I'm going to give you one more from here. Okay, this person, they say that their mom is Nicaraguan and their dad is Cuban. They're born and raised in Miami. They voted for culito. They said that because my mom isn't big on cursing or using vulgar language. She always says hijo de pi, but she always said culito de rana. So if colita was a thing, she'd pick colita, but it's not. So this person is using, I guess, the process of elimination or deduction, that because my mom will not say bad words and she said it this way, then that has to be the way, basically. I don't know. But yeah, this was a really cool list. And ultimately, what ended up winning on the Remezcla's poll on Twitter, again from May 2016, was the word colita. I will say personally, obviously you probably know because of how I introduced this episode and how I titled it, I grew up hearing and saying colita. I think ultimately what this boils down to is the culture that you're raised in, the people that you're around, and basically like what kind of Spanish they speak. I'm Mexican. I'm from the Texas-Mexico border. And so growing up with that, whatever that dialect is, Tejano probably, and it just feels easier to say. Like it rolls off of the tongue easier for me to say sana sana culita de rana versus sana sana culito. It feels weird to say it that way. So, but that's just me personally. However you say it is valid. It's fine. Ultimately, the sentiment is the same, right? So just a little bit more background about that phrase and how it can be kind of contentious, It's like any of these stories when people are like, no, it happened in my hometown and it happened this way. The reason now that I'm doing this episode too is because I recently came across a TikTok, and I think it was just posted a couple days ago. This person made a video and he's talking about how this phrase actually has its origins in Ireland and how its background is from Irish folk magic. Now in this video, and I'm going to link it, of course, in the Susto Google Docs, and it'll be on the video for Patreon. He says that they have discovered like a scroll or something, basically like a historical document. I'm assuming something from a grimoire, and a grimoire is a book of spells that belongs to one particular witch or practitioner, what have you. So I'm assuming they found it in something like that in Ireland that talks about using the tail of a frog or a tadpole or something with eucalyptus and oils and stuff like that, and rubbing it while chanting about the healing powers of the frog, essentially. he basically made the connection that, what do we do? And I'm assuming he's Mexico because he's talking about it being a Mexican thing. He's saying that now, Mexicans, we use that phrase while rubbing in Vicks Vapor Rub or Vicks Vaporub or Vicks based on whose abuela you're asking, but how like we use, and what's in Vicks, it's eucalyptus oil. So we use that while saying the chant. I Googled so hard, and I'm not a professional researcher, but I did as deep of a dive as I could, and I couldn't find anything directly linking that idea or those like Irish folk magic with this phrase in Latin America. And I couldn't find any sort of news or anything. I sent him a message, so hopefully he responds. And I asked if there were like any sources or if he could send me anything where he saw it, because I think it'd be cool to kind of track it down all that way. But with that being said, I did find some interesting things about the use of frogs or frog tails in healing ways. So this first link that I have here that I really want to dive into is from manchester.ac.uk, and it's the University of Manchester. It's like a summary maybe or an abstract of a study, but it's titled "The Secrets of a Tadpole's Tail and the Implications for Human Healing." And I'm just going to read through portions of this and talk through some of it too. But this says, and this is a scientific thing. So now we're diving into the world of science when it comes to what this phrase could mean. This says, scientists at the University of Manchester have made a surprising finding after studying how tadpoles regrow their tails, which could have big implications for research into human healing and regeneration. So when I read over this earlier, it is a lot of science terminology and phrasing, and I could not understand a lot of it, but I'm going to try and break down some of what I can understand. This says, it is generally appreciated that frogs and salamanders have remarkable regenerative capacities, in contrast to mammals, including humans. For example, if a tadpole loses its tail, a new one will regenerate within a week. For several years, Professor Enrique Amaya and his team at the Healing Foundation Center in the Faculty of Life Sciences have been trying to better understand the regeneration process in the hope of eventually using this information to find new therapies that will improve the ability of humans to heal and regenerate better. So the first thing that I immediately noticed when I started reading this was this professor who seems to be leading this study or this niche or what have you, just because they're the first person and kind of the only person named throughout this entry is a Professor Enrique Amaya. I don't want to, assume or make split judgments, but that sounds like a Latina or Hispanic name to me. So I'm wondering if this Professor Enrique Amaya has ever heard that phrase, and maybe that's what prompted him to study this. Right? This continues. In an earlier study, Professor Amaya's group identified which genes were activated during tail regeneration. So just to try and boil that down, it sounds like what Professor Amaya and his team are studying is how tadpoles specifically are able to regenerate when they lose their tails. That is a wound. That's the loss of an appendage. I don't know if a tail is a limb. I don't know what the definition is, but that's the loss of an appendage. So if like you cut your arm off, you would be able to grow that back. Tadpoles are able to do that with their tails. So that's seen in certain animals like frogs and salamanders, but it hasn't been seen in mammals. So they're studying how are these animals able to do this. I think they're amphibians. If I'm right, I deserve a golden star, and y'all need to let me know in the comments. But if I'm not, don't tell me. No, I'm kidding. Please tell me. So yeah, they're studying how are they able to do that. How can we maybe apply that to humans and other mammals and gain powers of regeneration and healing in that capacity? Because yeah, we're able to heal cuts and stuff, but if the cut's too big, you need stitches. And sometimes if something is cut too deep, it may not be able to be saved or even back to its full capacity. Anyway, so again, this continues. Unexpectedly, that study showed that several genes that were involved in metabolism are activated. In particular, those that are linked to the production of reactive oxygen species, or ROS, chemically reactive molecules containing oxygen. That's what ROS are. Reactive oxygen species are chemically reactive molecules containing oxygen. This is where it starts to lose me a bit, but we're going to try and hang on as much as we can. It says, what was unusual about those findings is that ROS are commonly believed to be harmful to cells. So this says some really sciencey stuff in the next paragraph about the presence of H2O2 and that kind of stuff when the regeneration is happening. But essentially, hydrogen peroxide, it's more present in the tadpoles during the regeneration process after they've lost their tails. And that it's present throughout the course of several days, which is normally how long it takes for them to grow their tails back, right? I don't know how this episode turned into a science class. I find this really interesting though, so I hope you're on this ride with me. Skipping going deep into that really sciencey stuff, it continues and this sums it up a little bit. It says, talking about the research, Professor Amaya says, we were very surprised to find these high levels of ROS during tail regeneration. Traditionally, ROS have been thought to have a negative impact on cells, but in this case, they seem to be having positive impact on tail regrowth. So then what Professor Amaya and his team started doing was they started, they're scientists. They started experimenting with this idea of how much the presence of ROS impacts the regeneration of the tadpole's tails. So they did different things to reduce the amount of ROS when this was happening. And they found, it says here, that in both cases, the regeneration process was inhibited and the tadpole tail did not grow back. Professor Amaya says, when we decreased ROS levels, tissue growth and regeneration failed to occur. Our research suggests that ROS are essential to initiate and sustain the regeneration process. We also found that ROS production is essential to activate WNT signaling, which has been implicated in essentially every studied regeneration system, including those found in humans. It was also striking that our study showed that antioxidants had such a negative impact on tissue regrowth, as we are often told that antioxidants should be beneficial to health. So they go on to talk about how basically this study is also changing, or it changed at the time. I don't know what they think now, but during the study, it changed how these scientists thought or believed about antioxidants. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm just reading and I'm trying to understand in real time what I'm reading. So don't listen to anything I'm saying about antioxidants. This is just from this one study about tadpoles. We don't know what that means for us as humans in our everyday lives. Right? I mean, they can grow their tails back. We can't. Maybe we need the antioxidants. They don't. There's some more sciencey stuff there. And there's notes for editors about this study and, requesting more information and whatnot. But I thought it was important to bring that link and that study into this episode because the tail of a frog, when it's a tadpole, it literally has healing properties. They can grow their tails back if it's cut off. Maybe like a rabbit's foot, is good luck. A tadpole tail is also good luck. Maybe this phrase is, summoning the power of a tadpole's tail because people have seen these animals for who knows how long and seen like, wow, this animal can grow its tail back when it's cut off or when it loses it or something. So how do we use that power? Let me imbue the power of the frog's tail into your wound so that you can heal like the tadpole, right? Something like that. The next link that I have is from a website called PureTechZPublications.com. This one, we're coming back from Europe, from the UK to Latin America. And this is called Gambo, a ritualistic healing substance from an Amazonian frog and a source of new treatments. This was also really interesting because now this is not talking only about the tadpole or the frogs and how they have healing and regenerative powers or properties, but now it's talking about how can we use frogs to help humans, right? Like this is happening. People are doing this. This is, I don't know if the term would be traditional or natural or cultural medicine, I think would be the best way to describe this for me. And this is by Jan M. Keppel Hesselink. And this is also a study. This abstract says, Gambo is the name of a complex mixture of a number of bioactive peptides. Again, there's going to be some real sciencey terms, but it's okay. We're going to get through this. It says, Gambo is the name of a complex mixture of a number of bioactive peptides secreted via the skin of a tropical frog, Phylomedusa bicolor. Here's a picture of it for the video. Since centuries, this secretion is harvested from the living animal by members of tribes living in the Amazonian rainforest and applied to little wounds in the arms or legs in order to enhance hunting skills. So this gambo, this secretion from this frog, is used in a ritualistic manner, as like ritual medicine, if you will. It says, since some decades, the use of this frog secretion has migrated to the West, is used in Gambo rituals and administered by Gambo practitioners to volunteers. The aim of the Gambo application is to heal or integrate and sometimes to cure or lessen symptoms such as chronic pain, anxiety, depression, or chronic eczema. Apart from this ritualistic use, Gambo is identified as a source for leads for new treatments, from antibiotics up to analgesics. We will briefly review the Gambo ritual and discuss 3 important neuropeptides from Gambo with analgesic properties. We will not be doing that because I don't have the brain power for that, but I will be reading through some of this to I think extract some things that I think are really interesting and relevant to the Sana Sana Colita de Rana chant. So I'm going to read from parts of the introduction, and this says, to find new medicines for chronic pain is not easy. Moreover, many drugs currently used, for instance in neuropathic pain, are just marginally effective, with high numbers needed to treat NNT. And I think NNT is like a measurement of pain from reading through this earlier, but I could be wrong. This continues. Pregabalin is widely used as a first-line treatment in neuropathic pain, but its NNT is 7.7, indicating that only few patients, or 1 out of 7.7, find sufficient pain relief. There is a general agreement between pain specialists about the fact that there is still poor knowledge of the pathophysiology of neuropathic pain and the best choice to be made for treatment. So basically, what I'm understanding is that pain management and treatment for pain is still something that we are trying to figure out. I don't see a date on this. I'm assuming this is a couple years old, but from what I know, this is something, pain management is still something that the medical community struggles with. Yeah, there are things that we can use, but we've seen it with the opioid epidemic. Opioids are used initially for pain management, but then people get addicted to them. And it's like, how do we help people manage their pain without making them sick? Because ultimately, people become addicted to these things, and addiction is an illness and it should be treated like so. So how do we, help people and then without making them sick, if that makes any sense? Okay, so I'm going to skip ahead here, and this says, therefore, at this European Pain Federation meeting, a call was made to find new and therefore different test paradigms for pain outside of the classic RCT field, which is randomized clinical trials, as well as to find new leads to treat patients suffering from chronic pain. Such new leads might be found in a special source, in the secretion of the skin of the Amazonian frog, Philomedusa bicolor. The secretion contains a cocktail of compounds and is becoming more popular in certain ritualistic settings in the West with the intention to heal and/or transform the user. We will discuss Gambo and outline one family of compound in the secretion which might have potential as new analgesic drugs, compounds called deltorphin, dermorphin, and cerulane or cerulitide. I'm doing my best to pronounce those compounds correctly. This says, it continues, Gambo, secretion of an Amazonian frog. Gambo is the name for the secretion of the frog's skin, and the secretion is also known under different names, such as Campu, Asate, Sapo, and Vacino da Floresta. Melchiori and Negri discussed in 2009 some of the newly identified valuable pain-killing compounds in the skin of certain Amazonian frogs. They pointed out that Italian pharmacologists discovered these peptides in Amazonian frogs in the 80s of last century, but members of an upper Amazonian tribe, the Matses, already knew of these pharmacological properties of the skin of this frog for a long time. Of course they did. They stated that for centuries, the Matses had already used the dried skin secretions of a certain tree frog, Philomedusa bicolor. I also love the way that name sounds of this frog, the Philomedusa bicolor. It just sounds cool to say. And they called that secretion sapo, based on the Spanish word sapo, meaning toad, but bicolor is not a toad, but a frog. Get it right. Miss Philomedusa is no toad, she is a frog. This says, traditionally the dried secretion of the skin was and is used by various tribes and countries around the Amazon, especially by the Catuquina, Caxinawa, Matses, Mayoruna, and Yawanawa people. These tribes applied or apply sapo via the administration of cuts or burns in the skin during shamanistic hunting rituals. So what I'm seeing here is that Gambo or sapo is administered, I want to say the word is subcutaneously, not intravenously. Intravenously is like an IV intravenous. Subcutaneous is under the skin. If you are in the medical field, or you know those words and I got it right, you have to tell me. I feel like I got it. Subcutaneously, which is under the skin, because it's administered through small cuts or burns. So small, meaning I'm sure they just like nick the skin with something, or they burn it so it blisters a tiny bit and it just gets into the skin, right? We'll see if I'm right. So they administer it that way. This says the application leads to enhanced hunting skills, partly due to the opioid analgesic activity of the compound deltorphin, dermorphin, and cerulane, probably all acting synergistically with each other, and with other bioactive peptides present in sapol. You know what? We're actually going to look these words up so we can, because I've said them more than once now and I want to know what they are. Deltorphin, also known as deltorphin A, is a naturally occurring exogenous opioid heptapeptide, and thus, okay, so it's an opioid. Let's see, there's also dermorphin. I'm assuming these are all some sort of opioid or like painkiller or something. Dermorphin is a heptapeptide. It's a natural opioid again. Okay, so these are all just opioids is what it seems like, but they're naturally occurring. Don't quote me at all. And cerulitide, also known as cerulane, is a 10 amino acid oligopeptide that stimulates smooth muscle and increases digestive secretions. Okay, so it sounds like these are all chemicals that just kind of, they make you feel good and they keep you going, is how I'm understanding it. Oh, hello, and it says it here. The application leads to enhanced hunting skills partly due to the opioid analgesic activity of the compounds. Okay, so it was already in there. I didn't have to look it up. It continues, Gambo rituals have been coming to the West since the beginning of this century, and more users report positive health effects after its use. After the collection of the frog slime, it is dried on a so-called Gambo stick. Picture here for Patreon. Gambo is removed from the stick and diluted with some fluid and subsequently applied to a fresh wound, mostly in the upper arm or under leg. The wound is a blister created via a smoldering twig. The bioactive peptides quickly enter the lymphatic system and subsequently the blood. Within seconds to minutes, the Gambo user experiences symptoms, mostly starting with palpitations and feelings of a rush. Further effects vary from nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and dizziness to feeling like a god, mostly after the ritual. Also, symptoms like kinxedema around the eyes, lips, or entire face may occur following the application of Gambo. Most, if not all of the symptoms can be explained by the pharmacological properties of the peptides. The symptom complex quickly resolves mostly within an hour. Side effects have been discussed in more detail in a different paper, and they cite it there, of course. So this is taking it on like a chemical level to a healing place. We know that opioids help with pain, but this specific frog and its secretion, it's used in this hunting ritual because it lessens the person's pain. I'm assuming you need that when you're hunting. Maybe your body gets hurt or sore from running, you get nicked by branches, who knows. I'm sure like if you're hunting in the jungle, I'm sure you're probably going to get hurt. Using the Gambo maybe helps you push through that pain so that you can have a good hunt, again, from what I'm gathering from this study. Okay, so I'm going to skip ahead past some really sciencey stuff to the conclusion, and this says, Gambo is a very special mix of bioactive peptides. Its ritual use in the West since the beginning of our age is increasing. Users of Gambo report healing effects and sometimes explicit effects on symptoms such as chronic pain. Gambo contains a great many interesting compounds, among which at least 3 peptides with pain-killing activity, especially, again, the ones that we've been saying each time, dermorphin and cerulane might hold promise for future studies. Since these peptides have already been tested for their efficacy and safety in patients, and also because these cultures have been using it safely for who knows how long. From the point of the anesthesiologist, the most suited indication would be intrathecal delivery of these 2 peptides in case of severe chronic cancer or postoperative pain. What is intrathecal? Is it like subcutaneous? Oh, okay. This says the intrathecal space is the area between the spinal cord and the thin, strong membranes that surround and protect it. So this is something they would inject into the spinal cord. I guess like a direct shot to the nervous system. Well, it's interesting though that they would, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. I don't understand why the delivery is different with these cultures when they're delivering it via small cuts or burns versus when they want to study it in like a lab and with doctors and scientists, it would be through that kind of injection. I don't know how that jump is happening. Maybe because when it's, when they're taking those chemicals or those peptides, they have a different efficacy when they're administered. I don't know. Again, not a scientist. I'm just wondering if I somehow have any doctors listening and you have any insight to this, please write into me. I would love to know. So the final link that I have, we're steering away from science, but we're still kind of in like academia, I guess. This is actually someone's dissertation. And I thought this was so cool. It was available online. Sana Sana Colita de Rana at Colita. And it's an academic paper. This is a dissertation. It says Mexican folk healing beliefs and practices among second generation Mexican American millennials. A dissertation submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Sociology in the Graduate School of the Texas Women's University, Department of Sociology and Social Work, College of Arts and Sciences, by Angela Sanchez Lawrence, AA BSW LMSW. Dr. Lawrence, I'm assuming now that, I mean, how could this not get approved? Congratulations. This is amazing. And this is in Denton, Texas in May of 2019. Y'all, when I tell you that I am so excited to just like sit down and dig my claws into this dissertation and read through it, it sounds amazing. The reason that I wanted to use this source and the reason that I thought it was important to bring it into this episode is because I feel like the general theme of this episode and of the phrase is, and it's titled perfectly in this dissertation, is it's Mexican folk healing beliefs. And it's not only Mexican. This dissertation, yes, is specifically about people with a Mexican background, but folk healing, right? And practices. And so I was really excited to see this and to read through some of it earlier. I'm going to read the first paragraph of the abstract, and this says, Curanderismo, or traditional Mexican folk healing beliefs and practices, have gained attention in academic scholarship over the past 60 years. However, there is no systematic study of the folk healing beliefs and practices of second-generation Mexican-American millennials, a large and rapidly growing population in the United States. To fill this gap in the literature, this dissertation examines the folk healing beliefs and practices of second-generation Mexican-American millennials, utilizing a narrative research approach that incorporates pláticas as a method of narrative development. The data for this study come from in-depth interviews with 15 second-generation Mexican-American millennials. Some things on the table of contents that I thought were really interesting and that I want to read more in depth later, because this is like an almost 200-page dissertation. They write about their findings in the awareness of folk illnesses, beliefs, and practices. And some of the things that they cover are ojo, susto, empacho, caída de mollera, nervios, envidia, sentimientos fuertes, falta de fe, aire, brujería, limpias, or barridas, folk healing practices and beliefs. Another overarching topic that they cover is folk healing practices and beliefs, and they talk about symbolic beliefs and practices, religious and spiritual practices and beliefs, metaphysical beliefs and practices, supernatural beliefs and practices, which could be belief in negative energies as spirits, ridding oneself of harmful spirits, belief in brujeria, reversing brujeria, visiting tarot card readers or psychic mediums, which I know a lot of our moms and grandmothers did, but swore down that they were católicas and they stayed away from all of that satanic stuff, but they were at the card reader every weekend, right? Another topic that they talk about in this dissertation is situational adherence to folk healing beliefs and practices, pregnancy, childbirth, and care for babies, consejos about pregnancy, childbirth, childbearing, protection, just like this whole thing. You have no idea how excited I am to read this. I would love to have Dr. Alejandra Sanchez Lawrence on Susto. I'm going to reach out to her because this whole thing sounds so interesting. So I just wanted to, I guess, bring attention to the dissertation. It doesn't talk specifically about Sana Sana, Colita de Rana, or frogs, but it talks about this overarching idea of folk healing and medicine. That's like the rabbit hole that we went through while discovering more about this phrase and where its origins could be. Ultimately, I didn't find where its origins are from. I don't know. Like I said, I Googled as much as I could, but I couldn't find a direct answer. All I could find is that this is a shared practice among various cultures, multiple cultures. Again, it makes me feel so good. It makes me feel so, I don't know, just to see how connected we really are across all of Latin America and how that reaches other cultures outside of our diaspora is the word that I use to describe it. But it's so interesting to me. I'm going to read the first paragraph of the introduction, and then I'll leave this there because, again, this is like a 200-page thing, and I wish I could just sit here and read it to you. But This says, as a young child, I believed that any wound that I could acquire could be instantly healed with a simple chant. Sana sana colita de rana. Si no sana hoy, sanará mañana. The English translation of this healing chant is, heal, heal, little tail of a frog. If you don't get well today, you will get well tomorrow. I would run to my mother for help, and she would say this chant while simultaneously rubbing my wound. Miraculously, all my pain would disappear, and I would run off to play. I never questioned this healing ritual, as I had full confidence in its healing abilities. I realize now that healing chants and practices such as these stem from a long history with the Hispanic community of healing oneself and one's family with what one had access to and what one had knowledge of. Oh, I'm getting emotional. Like a lot of traditional Mexican folk healing beliefs and practices, the origin of this chant is unknown. However, it continues to be practiced today, and its healing power is just as potent. Whoa, I don't know why that made me so emotional. Wow. I love that. This sentence got me. Damn, doctor. I'm going to read the sentence again. I realize now that healing chants and practices such as these stem from a long history within the Hispanic community of healing oneself and one's family with what one has access to and what one has knowledge of. Wow. Oh, I'm so excited to read the rest of this. One last thing that I'm going to leave you all with before I say my goodbyes about this chant and this episode in general. It brought up a memory in me, and I think that's why that just made me, I was about to cry. It made me think, I think many of y'all know this, and I've talked about this before, I think on Wikieror. I don't think I've ever really spoken about it on Susto, like explicitly, but it's also not something I'm secretive about or try to hide. I'm very open about it. I've spoken at the community, state, and national level. I've lobbied in Congress about policy. I've been on billboards and PSAs about this, but on March 26th of 2014, I was diagnosed with HIV. As a matter of fact, I had it for so long without treatment because I wasn't getting tested that it had progressed to an AIDS diagnosis. So I was very sick. I am healthy now. I manage it. I can live a quote normal life with a quote normal life expectancy. And I'm putting that in quotes because even without living with a chronic illness, that looks different for everybody, right? But I'm able to manage my HIV and it's fine. I live with it. It's okay. It doesn't bother me. But a reason I'm bringing this up is because, I'm going to get emotional again. I already know it. When I was very sick, my God, I'm emotional because I'm thinking of my mom, not because I'm thinking of my own experience. And this sentence, healing one's family with what one had access to and with what one had knowledge of. I was very sick. And before we went to the hospital, my mom took me to the curandera that lived on the other side of the block from us because we were scared and we didn't know what to do. And we had access to her and we had knowledge of what she could do. And so we went to this curandera to ask her for help because it was very clear that I was not doing well. And she tried to help us. Ultimately, I did not get to do the ritual that she instructed us to do because before I collapsed and I ended up in the hospital. But I have full faith that this curandera, this healer, tried to help me, and that, I don't know what would have happened if I did what she said. I'm not saying, and I've always said this, I don't think that it needs to be one thing or the other. So no, I don't believe that if I had done what she said, that boom, I wouldn't have had HIV. I would have been cured. I don't think that. I think it maybe could have helped me in some other way. Ultimately, that's not what happened, so I won't ever know. But I do believe that health, it should be approached holistically. And I believe that any good witch, any good bruja or curandero or anyone will encourage someone to seek help from all avenues accessible to them. And so ultimately, for me, that was through medicine, through doctors and the hospital. And I did do some healing of the spiritual kind during that time period because I almost died and I didn't. Thankfully, I'm here. Putting this episode together, it just really took me back to that space. And I feel like I am at peace with it now. I feel like I've done the work and I continue to do the work to see the silver lining in all of that. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like I'm just rambling now. But again, I'm bringing up that story because all of this episode just made me think of that and the power that Sana Sana Colita de Rana can have for some people. Welcome back. Thank you for listening today. Thank you for being here. I really did not know I was going to get that emotional. It could have been, honestly, I could have gotten more emotional, and I will probably cry after recording this, but that's okay. Crying is healing sometimes. As always, please send in your own stories if you would like me to read them on a Letters from the Beyond episode. It doesn't have to be a story. It can be a photo, a video, an audio recording, anything you think is spooky, and I'll share it either on the episode or on the socials. That's at Susto Podcast on every platform. Get your tickets to the San Antonio Paranormal Fest happening this Saturday, September 16th from 4 to 11 p.m. $40 for adults, $10 for kids. Go to CuriousTwins.com for your tickets. I'm so excited. It's going to be so much fun. I'm going to be at my table, but I'm going to sneak away here and there so I can go do some fun stuff while I'm there, because they have an amazing lineup of activities and speakers, and just I'm so excited. It's gonna be so fun, and I will see you there. Again, follow online for any and all updates on the show, for any appearances that I might be doing. You can also follow along on sustopodcast.com, and wherever you are listening, please make sure to interact with the show. Like, subscribe, follow, share, rate, review, anything you can do. It's the easiest way to support the show. And if you'd like to support the show in another way, you can do so by becoming a patron on patreon.com, where you can watch this video if you were a best goal friend, but otherwise there are other really cool perks that you could get. But for now, thank you to the patrons of this episode. You are Liza, Sadie, Rachel, Alejandra, Luther, April, Mario, Eva, Dee, Victoria, Josette, Sam, Angela and Co, Mandy, Julianne, Laurie, Jeannie, Monica, Desiree, Anasi, Ashes, Neresa, Rachel, Azucena, Javier, Rios, Ana, Christine, Marlene, Diana, Chata, Jessica, Lainey, and Desiree. Thank you all so much. I will see you in the next episode. And one more time, sana sana colita de rana que se quita mañana. Bye.